ladies and Mercedes. Welcome to another edition of Last Newsdesk on the Left.
Strunk you.
Kill that. Don't need that background noise.
Huh.
All right. So I am alive, in spite of the rumors. And this is our latest episode. I actually didn't get a chance to read your description, Adam, so you're going to have to give me the rundown in a second here. But first, let's introduce the crew. Of course, we have Adam.
Right.
And Kevin's here.
Hello.
The Gollix is in the house.
Somewhere.
And, of course, we have a petty fan.
I might be in the floorboard, you'll never know.
All right, so since we nominally have the entire crew here, let's get rolling. Adam, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Well, if you looked at the title I gave to this week's episode, this is kind of the culmination of a few stories we've been covering in recent times. In fact, our leadoff is hopefully the last time we ever have to talk about Andrew Cuomo.
Bye. Goodbye.
Yeah.
It
Our
probably won't
Climax.
be, but one can hope.
He'll still be in the news cycle because just because he resigned doesn't mean that the investigation and the impending arrest and trial will not be in the news.
Right.
I don't know if we'll get on
Honestly,
trial, but I think
Yeah.
I think after he's out and Hochul takes the mansion in 2 weeks, that's it for him.
I will say I think Bill O'Reilly of all people had the correct take, so to speak.
Wow, I almost choked on that.
let me finish. In where he said, there probably aren't going to be charges, but there's going to be a civil suit. He probably speaks from experience there.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
sounds about
Sage words from a man who knows.
yeah. Because I'm trying to think of what we would actually be charged with. Like sexual harassment isn't like illegal in a criminal sense.
Right.
And he hasn't been accused of like sexual assault or rape or anything more severe. Also, I do want to point something out to people. Pope had a very weird take on this whole thing on Twitter. About the whole Democratic apparatus covering this up or whatever, or knowing about this. Okay.
Who had a weird take?
Pope had. The lawyer Ken Wright.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said Pope, and I was like, what, like the Pope?
No.
That would be if he chimed in at all. That would be a weird take.
Yeah. But my point is, okay, shit being known about, especially in whisper networks, that is a difference than what happened here. You want to know why Andrew Cuomo's out? Why the entire Democratic upper management turned against him? It's because this wasn't a fucking rumor. This wasn't allegations. This was an official report compiled by the New York Attorney General.
Right.
This was their official findings. That's a lot more damning because it's got a lot more official weight on it than just, I do not like saying that necessarily, but I think that's an important distinction than just, a bunch of people have accused him of things, because that happened with Andrew Cuomo, and he was able to successfully dig in.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you've got, the highest law office of New York saying he did sexually harass 11 women.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused the entire Democratic establishment to finally tell him to fuck off. Because, getting rid of powerful people isn't fucking easy.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Right.
so I'm not cheerleading anything, but it's like the proper channels were done. The proper procedures were filled. He had his due process, so to speak, and the findings were that fucking damning. And as far as Matt Gaetz being next, I'm like, yeah, keep in mind the obvious differences between Republicans and Democrats. But, remember, he's still only under investigation. He hasn't been indicted yet. These kind of designation changes count for a lot. Okay? It's like those two Republican House members who got charged with like insider trading and shit like that. They didn't get kicked out until they got charged. That's an important difference. So I just want to be clear on that. This wasn't just a bunch of women coming together and finally the mainstream populace listening to their allegations. No, this was more official than that, so to speak. So, and the end result is, in 13 days now, Andrew Cuomo's out on his ass.
Not a fucking what I was in the house.
Yes, and like I said, he's probably done politically. Like, I don't see him running for another office once he's done here. Ever. Because, like I said, the entire Democratic establishment, not just like New York state people, but, fucking Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, up to President Biden, all the important people that would back another run for anything.
Told him to get the hell out.
Yeah. So, if you don't have that, like, especially if you're somebody who's worked in politics, you don't have that kind of backing, you're not going to get in. Like, unless the people genuinely want you back. And I don't really see that happening. So, like I said, it's terrible that this shit happened. It's terrible that it took so long for any sort of measure of justice to happen. But you know what? At least it fucking happened. Which is more than I can say for a lot of these affairs. Literally.
Right.
Is there anything else you really want to say on Andrew Cuomo at this point?
No, goodbye and good riddance.
Yeah.
He wasn't a terribly nice guy to begin with, so the hell with him.
No. Like other stories of that have been coming out the past week. Like apparently he called up the Obama White House to threaten a prosecutor who was investigating him.
Lovely.
What a charming individual.
I mean, is it any big fucking surprise that Andrew Cuomo turned out to be an asshole? He wasn't exactly hiding it. And oh boy, somebody from New York, being a dickweed.
And we just lost all of our New York viewers. Thanks, guys.
I like to think that New Yorkers are self-aware enough to know that they're assholes.
Right, I'm just saying, he had that particular kind of cadence.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all New Yorkers are assholes, but they're a definite type. If not New York, then like tri-state area, New Jersey, things Sopranos. Anyway, like I said, moving on to more positive developments that happened the same day, like about 20 minutes beforehand, I think. Fucking Cuomo had to suck all the oxygen out of, the bipartisan infrastructure deal passing the Senate. I'm like,
hooray!
Well, I say hold your horses because it ain't over until it's on Biden's desk.
I agree with that. Like, there was a lot of celebration for cause because, the thing that people said wasn't going to happen did happen. It's not law yet, but, they said it wouldn't even, pass the Senate. Like, and honestly, the biggest problem facing both the reconciliation and the bipartisan bills isn't necessarily from Republicans at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's like, in the case of the bipartisan thing, we got to deal with the fucking far leftists, who, they apparently want to play the role of the Freedom Caucus here.
Yep.
I'm like, and as far as the reconciliation, apparently Emperor Manchin has misgivings about it, but that might just be about the amount of money and
Yeah, that's what that's going to be. It's about the amount of money.
Yeah, I'm like, the top line can be adjusted. That's not a big concern on my part. Like, Joe Manchin is very much for infrastructure. He's not going to torpedo this. They'll find the dollar amount.
And for most of the articles that I've read, since Cinema is using him for cover, if he falls in line, then she will fall in line with him.
Yeah.
Right. Because, okay, here's their skin in the game. They need infrastructure, to take home to their constituency.
Yes.
That's a big part of why this happened in the first place.
Yes, we need infrastructure in Tucson before I break another fucking axle.
Yeah.
On these goddamn potholes in this state.
Yeah. It's like, I've said
Really?
this.
I just thought y'all just drove on the sand.
This isn't North Africa, son.
Yeah.
North Africa don't have cacti.
That's true.
Anyway, as I was saying, okay, first of all, why did 19 Republicans vote on this? Well, first of all, roads and bridges aren't Republican or Democrat. Those are very tangible things that people need and like.
Yeah,
something
and
being
dickheads,
a politician without liking the taste of pork.
Yeah, and dickheads like Toomey don't need another bridge collapsing in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And not to mention that their local politicians, mayors, governors, all that, they want the fucking infrastructure. Because, infrastructure is really fucking important. It's also, you can't fearmonger infrastructure like you could see healthcare. Remember like the healthcare debate of 2010 and fucking death panels and you're gonna take your healthcare.
I'm trying to block it out, but yeah, I do recall it.
My point is, what was exactly the Republican track here? Oh no, you're going to get roads and bridges.
They'll be communist bridges.
Yeah. It's
So
like,
what they're going to do is they're going to say that it costs too much money and inflate. There you go.
They tried that; it didn't go anywhere. Because
well, it didn't go anywhere last time. That's not to say it won't go anywhere next year.
I'm like,
it didn't go much where.
Yeah. I'm not talking about midterms or whatever. I'm talking about actually getting the thing passed. Two different things.
Yeah.
I'm like, because, like I said, the big danger isn't necessarily from the Republican sector right now. It's, remember, the Democratic margins are fucking slim right now, and the squad has been squawking about holding this shit up. Now, which is a problem in its own right. Because, they like, I'm trying to remember like the details, like that. They want stuff in like the reconciliation thing. I think, like I said, they're threatening to play spoiler to this whole affair. How real that threat is, I honestly don't know, because I'm like, I have a hard time seeing the squad being the spoil of the Freedom Caucus. Because,
Mhm.
Well, first of all, the
because
squad is not nearly as big as the Freedom Caucus was.
Also, the far leftist people do still actually have policies that they want, whereas most of the Freedom Caucus basically just wants to kill the government.
Okay, they
Right.
are also not political children.
like, I don't necessarily agree with that in the sense of some of the stuff that they do, but they are more savvy than the fucking Freedom Caucus. I mean, how could you? It's kind of easy to be that. I'm just saying,
Political theater is advanced politics. It's not something even performative politics is not something that amateurs are generally successful at doing. That's what I'm pointing out, is they're not children like Ted Cruz in his first term going, no, we're going to hold the government hostage until you give us what we want, and then not actually get anything at all.
Right.
Blast that.
That's not how the squad works. They'll push it. They like their political brinksmanship, but ultimately they'd rather have something than nothing.
Yeah. Like I said, because once again, one of the big selling points for infrastructure is, especially the more traditional points of infrastructure. That what they're arguing is for more climate stuff, and so on and a lot of more progressive policies, and how that is going to intermingle with like Joe Manchin is a question that remains.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, as far as the timeline on infrastructure at this point, it's going to come sooner rather than later.
Right.
Because I believe the House has been called back to session in on August 23rd.
Yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna see what the conflict is going to be, because I'm pretty sure that the House is going to have one reconciliation bill, while the Senate's going to have another.
Which always works wonderfully, of course.
I mean, that's why they call it reconciliation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's infrastructure isn't here yet. It's still got to go through the House and possibly back to the Senate. And if it passes all that, it then becomes a thing to be passed along to Biden. I'm like, right now it seems to be on track.
Mm-hmm.
But that could change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't discount that possibility. That being said, a lot of what people said would not have, would happen did not happen. There wasn't really any loosey football moments with this. And this was actually done in good faith. So, like I said, those are fucking modern day hurdles.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. I guess continuing along with the COVID situation.
Why not?
I have at least one friend who, after going back to work for 2 weeks, they are now closing the office again.
Mm-hmm.
What a shock. So in the state of Texas, and indeed we're starting to see here in Florida, local municipalities are in full-on rebellion against the governor edicts.
Yeah, because a lot of them are really, 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 really sticking to their Definitely, there is no way that we can or should make actual rules against this. We just have to hope on the, good sense of the people of the states of.
Yeah, and the local, and the
Unfortunately,
local,
go ahead.
and the local cities and the municipalities are saying, "Fuck that! We're introducing mask mandates." I
Yeah.
personally think that,
Well, that's not going to last because I kind of have the feeling that once these go into court, state is going to go over the municipality, and it's going to be bad because particularly in Texas, the Texas Supreme Court is full of Republicans, and they're going to give Governor Nero on wheels everything he wants. So,
I'm like, I suppose that depends on where the jurisdiction is. If it's federal, they're going to lose.
yeah,
Like,
it's going to be state. So,
Well, Chris, it's also the state that literally just signed arrest warrants for all the, Democratic state congressmen.
yeah, they don't care. At this point, at this point, I just don't feel confident. That's in that state at all.
it's not so. I don't think you have that identified correctly. It's not that they don't care. It's that they are, for whatever reason, still catering to the anti-vax crowd.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they don't care because of that.
no,
But because they're doing that, they don't care.
I'm like,
I know that's exactly what this is.
no. Once again, if they didn't care, they wouldn't be instituting a anti-mask ban.
Well, they both do care and don't care at the same time. They do care because they care about the angry white people. And yes, I'm going to say it right now. The majority of the people pushing all of this anti-mask, anti-vaccine stuff, the loudest, the ones that have been up in your face, the ones that you've been seeing all over the country at the school board meetings, you notice they've been all white.
of course.
That's an accident. So, but they do care because they care about those people. They don't care because they don't care about anybody else. So
No, they want. No. Once again, you're missing my point here. It's not. It's not apathy. It's malice, because they want. Once again, it's another extension of the Republicans want to force their fucking viewpoint on the rest of society.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
because it's the same thing that's powering all of this, ban critical race theory bullshit that I don't think we've actually touched upon.
Yeah.
It's all this playing into the culture wars bullshit, because that's that's their main.
All they have? Yeah.
That's the main thing these days. They don't have actual fucking policies or whatever. It's just, I hate things.
And unfortunately, I hate things minus 2 elections usually wins.
I'm like, it's hard to say on that.
Bush got elected in 2004 because of I hate gays. Donald Trump got elected because I hate people from outside the country. And chances are that the Republicans are going to do well next year because of I hate things.
I don't buy into that at all, because their hatred of vaccines is kind of killing them.
Well, it's not going to kill them in a large and round way that we would like in order to stop them.
That remains to be seen.
I wouldn't bet the farm on it.
You are betting the farm on it. Sorry.
No, I'm not betting the farm on it because.
Yes, you are.
I want to, but.
Well, this got awkward.
Yeah, keep in mind, we're just beginning to enter the school season.
Yeah.
The current Republican narrative is that cycling through the media in the most milquetoast fashion is that they're trying to blame vaccine apathy on the Biden administration's messaging, which is kind of ridiculous. And it's not really getting that much traction because as far as number of outside media sources that have picked up and run with this message, it's like zero. It's just I spend a lot of time on my Microsoft Edge homepage because I don't have a homepage set, expressly so that way I can get all of this stuff. And based on my browsing habits, apparently they like sending me a lot of right-wing media. Apparently I like making myself angry when I cruise the internet. And that's the only thing that I've seen that supports this idea that they're now trying to blame the whole, we don't like things on it. And based on the information I'm reading, even from right-wing sources, this is not working out.
No.
This,
And
this narrative is not picking up a lot of traction. I mean, keeping in mind that the number of people who are deliberately choosing to be unvaccinated is roughly proportional to the percentage of population that would follow Donald Trump directly into the mouth of hell.
But the problem is that seems to be about 20%.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's enough to be problematic, but it isn't necessarily enough to flip the government at this point.
Yeah, collectively.
Also keep in mind, remember, Trump lost 2020 because he fucked up the COVID response.
Yeah, well,
there's that.
there's that.
So,
if they get, I'd say we should take the temperature again after this massive reconciliation, because it's one of those.
Yeah, by spring.
What?
Probably, I think. Well, probably more to the point, probably near spring.
Yeah.
22.
But I think you'll see the country's temperature rise a little bit on Democrats if they manage to get this whole thing done mostly intact.
Yeah, well, if they're able to do it, of course, there's also what's happening tomorrow, which made to say that it probably won't even matter.
what's tomorrow?
Release of the redistricting data from the census, which will probably tell Democrats, you're pretty much fucked unless you fight back.
I mean, they do seem to be better at that these days. Like I said, 2020.
They're going to have to.
Like I said, I'm not as bearish on 2022 as you are because, there's just so many factors going on right now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's guaranteed one way or the other at this point.
Yeah.
Right now it's still a toss-up, but
I'm just trying to be real because of history, the fact that history suggests that midterms are kind of the main party, and yes, I know that it might be different this time, but
I get that, but it's also we are living in a very unreal time, like. So I can't
and not to put too fine a point on it, but just being real is a lot of times code speak for negativity. It's like don't be real because that's being down. We need enthusiasm. We need enthusiasm to push the agenda. We need to stop just saying, well, I'm just being real about it, because that's basically throwing up your hands and saying, well, it's in God's hands now. And I don't think there's enough faith in this crew right here to be putting anything in God's hands.
No, I'm like I'm being real about 2022 and saying, yeah, I don't really know, because that's still a year and a half away.
Right.
It's. I know what the historicals favor. I also know we are in a very unhistorical time. And we have to see how infrastructure plays out.
We overrode in spite of COVID. We did manage to override voter apathy for once. In the 2020 in the 2020 election. So Well, but what they need to do is they need to they need to dial themselves into. I say they. It's those in charge of the party, whatever. Need to really dial themselves into whatever it is that America actually seems to want. You know, and
I think
and hammer
infrastructure
that.
is a good thing to do, and that's another contrast between like Biden and the Obama administration. Biden, has been touting the stuff that the what was it? The COVID relief stuff did.
Right.
Obama never liked trumpeting his accomplishment.
I don't know about that. I mean, he did have the weekly address. Let's not get into the habit of once again discounting Obama or downplaying what he did, because.
Okay, not well. I mean, he downplayed it in the sense that he did not take out advertisements to let the voters know what he did.
Did he take out a full page ad in the New York Times at one point?
He tried to do a lot in 2010, but unfortunately, there was just too many people who went back and said, "Well, it wasn't big enough. It wasn't single payer. I'm staying home."
Also, that's not also being bragging, quote unquote bragging. I know that's not what we're trying to talk about, but things that can perceived as being bragging about about your accomplishments might not necessarily be considered a good look for a I just executive.
Well, right. Well, you see, now that's tone policing. We got to watch that too, because
I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying I'm worried people would be.
Well, I get that, but that comes off as tone policing. I mean, this is the guy who literally in the second debate pulled the play the tape bit on Mitt Romney. I mean, this is not a guy who is afraid to trumpet his accomplishments, and this is one of those burying the lead issues, where they're like, oh, well, Obama didn't do this and Obama didn't do that, and Biden did this, and it's like, let's not whitewash history here, because I mean, I saw a meme where they were like, well, Obama didn't accomplish anything, and we had an argument about this last season, and I looked it up and I ate my crow for being wrong about this. Okay, and it said Obama didn't accomplish anything until 487 days into his term, and look at Biden, he's like 10 days in, he's doing all this miracle stuff, and it's like, hold on a second, he's not the great white savior here. Okay, so yeah, okay, and as far as trumpeting, again, Biden's been kind of easy going on this whole thing up until now. I mean, yeah, he's pulling strings behind the scenes, but as far as in the public eye, he's not yelling at the podium.
Also, we as a people have to adjust a bit, because compared to the last guy, a normal person's amount of bragging is practically silent.
Right. That's fair, but I'm just saying, he's not getting up on the podium on a weekly address in the Rose Garden, telling, well, what's left of the Rose Garden, telling everybody, hey, listen, I'm right, everybody else can fuck off. Obama did way more of that. Less than Donald Trump, but way more of that than Joe Biden.
Fair enough.
Although frankly, there's really not, you can do as much, trumpeting your own accomplishments as you want. It depends on if it gets through to people or not.
Right, and that's important too.
There are a lot of obstacles to that, because the media really would like the old guy back. Let's be fair. They like Republicans more than Democrats in terms of getting stuff up there, and they really don't like to go into deep details about policy achievements, because that's too boring for people.
Well, here's the deal. I always use my dad to take the temperature of the nation, because my dad is fairly representative of what a moderate looks like. Okay, so my dad's biggest complaint is that he doesn't feel like the Democrats are doing anything. That's always been his biggest complaint against the Democrats. And I said, you do realize that they did this and this and this and this, and then he says, well, why didn't they say anything about it? And I shrug, because I don't know the actual answer to that, other than, oh, well, it's bad optics to brag about policy. And it's like, well, clearly not.
Also, some people have a thing where they prefer to let their achievements stand for themselves, regardless of how well they actually do.
I think in the past that the problem with the Democrats is always that instead of bragging on their accomplishments, they're picking at the faults of their enemies, so to speak. And picking at the faults of their enemies doesn't resonate with the American people, because the American people think of themselves as exceptional, and they think of the people that they voted for as exceptional, whether they deserve that accolade or not. So what they need to do is they need to start making themselves look more exceptional. I mean, that's just my take on the whole situation. They don't spend a lot of time. They don't spend a lot of time hyping their accomplishments and doing it in an exciting way.
Well, I think that's one of the nuclei here at doing infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, although the problem is that, again, it's like a complex policy issue, which infrastructure is. This is a complex policy issue. People aren't excited about complex policy issues. They want to be excited. They want to be, pumped up. And talking about policy issues in a complex, detailed way, doesn't excite people. And it's like,
well, they'd get a lot more They'd get a lot more sensational response if, like, every time somebody on the right was decrying the cost of this new infrastructure bill in a speech, that the entire left wing of the Democratic Party and the Senate started humming "London Bridges Falling Down."
Want to be excited. They want to have something. They want to feel it, and. Unfortunately, I don't think that infrastructure will kick in even if we do pass it unless, we start seeing things getting built.
Right.
And who knows how long that is between. And also, here's another thing to keep in mind. We can allocate all this money. States don't have to take it.
And
I think COVID is a pretty clear indication of that.
There was another thing that happened under Obama that really needs to happen under Joe Biden, and that is that when the TARP was passed, okay, as they started trickling out the funds and getting things going with the infrastructure, because they did actually do a pretty large infrastructure renewal package as part of the the American Recovery and Renewal Act. I think that was the one that actually passed after Obama was elected. That's the TARP was the one.
Obama,
yeah, that was the Obama one that passed in the first month of his presidency. That was a supplement. That was a $1.4 trillion supplement that they hammered him. They just the deficit, rah! And he never actually paid that back during his administration. That stuck as a negative dollar amount on the budget in perpetuity, until the second term when he brought the deficit down to $800 billion. But anyway,
he cut it like 5% until until that guy came in and just completely blew it all up again.
Yep. But the one thing that they did, remember what I was talking about touting in the Rose Garden? Did you know that every time that I drove down the Interstate 10, I saw about 4,000 signs that said, "Proudly funded by the American Recovery and Renewal Act"?
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that has to be seen. Like, things getting built because of the whatever the heck they're going to call this thing.
They need to get that kind of advertising campaign, because that's what drove Obama to being a two-term president.
Absolutely.
I'm actually expecting that, because remember, the real reason that infrastructure was picked over anything and everything else is spite. Remember, let's be real here. Like, one of the big reasons Biden chose infrastructure was because the screamy orange yam, touted his infrastructure credentials time and again, but he didn't get shit done there, because it turns out you actually have to work to get things done.
Yep.
And this is basically Biden saying, I got the big thing that you wanted to be known for done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be touted, because spite is a very powerful emotion. So,
it's like Biden just needs to get out there, with his Lee Greenwood library and start, making everybody proud to be Americans again, and if he sells it right, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, from what I understand, he's starting to do the selling of the infrastructure deal, but he's also been on the he hasn't been pumping it up because they're still negotiating. It's still going through Congress. He's kind of waiting for Congress to do all the things, which is
he has to have stuff. He's waiting for it to get on his desk.
Yeah, which is a fair enough thing.
I'd like to see a little.
Things,
I'd like to see a little more public Biden. That's all I'm saying is him saying, "Look, I put it on their door. It's all up to them now."
Fair enough.
And he's done as much as he possibly can do without, rocking the boat. He doesn't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if he goes too hard, he's going to blow it up.
Yeah. Which I think, like I said, it's a tightrope that he has to walk right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But I would just say, as a response to the criticism, it's like, look, I put it at their door. It's now up to them.
Yeah.
He needs to actually say that.
Right. Anyway, so we've got a lot of entertainment stuff this week.
All right, let's go.
Where do we want to go first?
Well, I got South Park first. I know, that might be a bit of a surprise, but you might have missed this, but it bears bringing up because Viacom just invested a shit ton of money into South Park.
Even though it's well past its prime.
Yes and no, because actually, in terms of brands people want, it's like third from the top, especially internationally. I mean, that's another thing I think a lot of people on Twitter miss. It's like, okay, even if you take out, say, the appeal in the U.S., don't know, how is this doing internationally? Because that's probably your answer there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it would probably be the reason you would dump a shit ton of money.
But yeah, so Viacom is going to be putting in $900 million into South Park. Which
wow.
The end result is going to be 14 what they're calling movies, but kind of like standalone specials. They're not going to be full-length fucking movies.
Yeah, they're probably going to be like what they used to call back in the day television films for television.
Yeah, or something along of what a lot of shonen series do. Here's a 16-movie. But the point is, they're going to be 14 of these, and they're going to come out on Paramount Plus,
which is what this is really all about.
Right, because Viacom is still trying to sell Paramount Plus to the world, and
basically this deal is basically to say, okay, what is it, HBO Max that got that big exclusivity agreement? It's like, HBO Max does this, but we want you to come here because we have this.
Which is fair enough, because, okay, as far as the entirety of South Park migrating over to Paramount Plus, that may never happen. Because here's the thing. The Matt and Trey, they control at least 50% of the rights, maybe more.
It's 50-50 per their 2007 contract.
Yeah, and so when you have that kind of control, they have to sign off on that. If they don't sign off on it, then no, it doesn't happen. And here's the thing. There might be more money in having South Park syndicated. Because keep in mind, South Park, the streaming rights went for $500 million on their own.
Yeah.
And this was after a bidding war, which HBO Max won.
HBO Max paid $550 million for it. and because Matt and Trey have 50%, that means they got $275 million. So now you have this one, which is $935 million in a 6-year, and upfront and plus upfront payments for everything in here, bonus money. So, yeah. I'm reading THR here. A source told them basically they took a mortgage instead of selling the house.
Well, here's the thing. They are billionaires, not just off the backs of South Park, but the Book of Mormon as well has propelled them. So you can say South Park's past its prime, but it's still bringing in the money. Yeah, like still.
What did they say around season 18 or so when they did that little documentary about the show? They said they kind of hate the show right now, but they'll keep doing it as long as Comedy Central or whoever is paying them to continue making it.
And that's a perfectly understandable track to take. At season 18, like Matt and Trey have loathed South Park for a while. Like, remember that one episode they did where they felt like they were too. They were basically saying they felt they were too old for this, but makes too much money.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's now their hatred of it fuels the creativity.
Guess so.
I'll take your word for it. I stopped watching South Park after the 2016 election.
Yeah.
They still have problems with transphobia, so there is that.
Yeah, that's a big reason why they are flat out transphobic. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, among other things.
Right, but I'm saying the really bad stuff, the transphobia, the racism, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's there. It's still there. They still they did an episode about trans athletes recently, which was awful.
You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, they're gonna keep making a lot of money. Viacom might buy out their production company, and also the streaming deal with HBO Max comes out in 2025.
Yep. So, like I said, the industry of South Park is still very fucking profitable.
Because they need all of. Because here's the thing, Viacom needs all of the IP that it could possibly get right now.
Yeah. So,
compare them to a Warner, compare them to even to a Disney, compare them to a Universal, compare them to Columbia. Everybody's got a lot of stuff. Viacom has the least amount.
It's not so much that they have the least amount, but
they're just one studio.
Well, they're also not one studio because they got CBS, they got Nickelodeon, they got MTV.
Don't they have BET and a couple other things too?
Yeah, my point is for example, Paramount Plus is really leaning on Nickelodeon stuff right now.
More accurately, they're really leaning on Star Trek. They just signed a new 5-year deal with Kurtzman till 2026.
But the other stuff I hear about is
I believe it's a $1.5 billion deal. It's no small amount, and he's personally reaping in something like $515 million of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at is that compared to the other guys, there's a limited amount of IP that they have. I mean, there's Star Trek over here, there's South Park over here, although they don't have it fully yet, although that might change by mid-decade. They have SpongeBob. That's a thing that just happened today, by the way. They also pretty much loaded up on that too. I mean, that's pretty much it. If you think about it, Star Trek, SpongeBob, South Park, what else is there that's pretty much reliable and guaranteed for more than just a year or two?
Well, apparently, iCarly. Here's one of the things that Viacom's been doing. They've been syndicating some of their Nickelodeon properties over to Netflix. Avatar's in that league now because it absolutely blew up on Netflix in 2020.
Basically,
Well, we're
until
calling it the Last Airbender now because of the whole James Cameron dispute. But
No, we're calling it Avatar now because of the whole James Cameron.
Oh, okay.
There we go. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, what I'm trying to get.
If we're lucky, we'll never get those sequels.
Yeah, well, before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to preface that with unpopular opinion.
until relatively recently, basically Viacom's digital plan was, hey, everybody can get a piece of something from us, and they thought that would be, the right way to go. But unfortunately, what they figured out was that's not really the case. You got to have everything yourself. You can't give everybody a piece of something.
Actually, Viacom has sent out the syndicating on the Netflix is actually working out really well for them. Like, apparently, the iCarly reboot did really good numbers for them based off of the fact that they put that on Netflix. Like, here's the thing. Viacom got big off of fucking syndication.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
A lot
of the biggest stuff in their portfolio basically is rerun packages.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Paramount. The whole reason.
Look at all their networks and how much reruns and archival content airs on there.
Dating back to the 70s, the fact that Star Trek ever got a revival in the first place is largely due to the fact that Paramount, once syndication became a thing, realized that the only way that they were going to get quote unquote network deals was by consolidating all of the disparate markets and by selling them as shows in syndication in the first place. I mean, that's what put them on the map.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we still got a lot more in terms of the streaming wars because, like I said, a lot of stuff has happened this week in regards to that because, let's see, Sony has completed...
Sony now owns all of anime?
No,
not necessarily.
Almost.
A good chunk of it.
Yeah.
A good chunk of
Sony,
it.
Yeah. So Sony has completed its purchase of Crunchyroll. And, that puts them in a pretty prime position in terms of getting the rights to English language anime. No, they're not a monopoly. Get into that a bit later, but
that was.
Is it Funimation or Aniplex? Which one? It's one of those.
Funimation.
Yeah, so Funimation and Crunchyroll are now under the same.
Thing.
And
it's not a monopoly. There are other players in the game, but I mean, they are a pretty powerful player right now.
Yeah, I mean, right. It would be like saying Disney is a monopoly, and it's not. They control most of a lot of things, but not everything.
Yeah, it's not a monopoly, but it's still it doesn't.
I'm gonna buck the trend and say Funimation and Crunchyroll being together again is a good thing. I know that might sound strange, but I think people have kind of forgotten, it wasn't that long ago, just how well Funimation and Crunchyroll worked together, when they had the alliance going, but, we're actually separate companies. Because
that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, they're good at their separate companies working together, but if they're one company under the same corporate umbrella, that doesn't feel right though. That feels monopolistic. It feels,
but let me break it down to you. They have different specialties. Funimation is more powerful in the dub side of things. Crunchyroll is more powerful in the sub side of things. That's why they worked so well in the first place.
Yeah.
And, it's also, I know people want to bemoan the re-alliance because consolidation or whatever. Like, it's not like them working separately was making the anime world better, quite frankly. Both of their fucking apps are garbage. So, just getting rid of
come on. Don't hold back, Adam. How do you really feel about it?
I mean, I don't use them because they're so bad.
Yeah.
Like, seriously,
let's just say alternate. I have used the Funimation app, and I'll tell you, sometimes it's a little bit like trying to watch Rick and Morty on Adult Swim. Because every time the commercials run, I would say every other commercial break, I end up getting a blocked message and have to restart the whole video.
Ouch.
Yeah.
But yeah, and for take all those problems. It's even worse on like the consoles and other streaming devices. Like I said, just merging those terrible things into maybe hopefully one terrible thing is a net positive. Like but as far as player power, well, that gets to another story that broke over the weekend. That is the announcement of JoJo Part 6. Yeah, Stone Ocean's finally on its way. But, the big surprise was that Netflix grabbed it.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's why...
Goodbye.
Yeah, that's why Funroll isn't considered a monopoly, because Netflix is a power player. They're not as they don't grab a lot of stuff like Funroll does, but they when they
a lot more lately.
They have
the move. They're clearly making a big move there.
Well, yeah, I'm like, and apparently this was like at the production committee level. Because JoJo Part 6 is going to premiere on Netflix ahead of the Japanese broadcast, which is happening next year.
Oh, shit.
It is pretty popular in the Americas now that we finally got it.
Yes. I'm like, and, this follows along other big maneuvers that they've been making in the anime space, because, they grabbed the latest Gundam film. Gundam Hathaway. And you might not think that's a big deal. Gundam Hathaway has actually made the most money at the box office since fucking Char's Counterattack. No accounting for taste, but
well, it's very pretty, and unlike Unicorn, it does actually have like a story where stuff happens, I guess.
Still, it's very Tomino 90s Gundam.
Yes, it is a little bit questionable in terms of followable.
Yeah. But they also grabbed the Sailor Moon Eternal movies.
Shaman King 21.
Yeah.
Eden Zero.
Yeah. Like I said,
Mashima's third project.
Yeah.
So they've been putting money down and getting involved in all of these things. They're going deep.
Yep.
So,
and this is also
right now.
Okay.
And this is also bad news for the Toonami block, who actually had quite a few bits of bad news this week, I guess, in the sense that they lost JoJo, but they also lost their production partner, because Crunchyroll and Adult Swim were working together. But that kind of flows into the next story, because Adult Swim and Cartoon Network, they just named the Toonami head Jason DeMarco as their head of, what was it?
Animation.
Yeah.
It's part of his title.
Yeah. Which means that Cartoon Network and Adult Swim are doubling down on anime, and they did clarify they do mean anime as in produced in Japan, not what Netflix sometimes calls anime, even though it's all done in like North America.
I say good luck to them, because there's only so much productions that they can do before they go up the wall.
I will just throw the fucking JoJo announcement on there and show you why they need to do this.
Yeah. I mean, you can get why they're doing it, because Netflix is over here. Now Sony has this. Warner wants to play in the game, and they did have Crunchyroll as a key part of HBO Max until this. So, I mean, it's not like they have a choice.
Well, also keep in mind that, at the very least, the Adult Swim side of things isn't afraid of laying down the Warner Brothers IP, because one of the Crunchyroll productions, for example, is Blade Runner, Black Lotus.
Yeah, that is going to be that. I think is going to be the test as to really, even with this move here with Jason getting this job.
Well,
Like,
keep in mind, like Jason previously was named as the head of what is it, the Lord of the Rings animated series that they're doing.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's been.
it's really going to be. I think Blade Runner is going to really be that test of, okay, is it Western action animation or is it anime? Because that action animation part is part of his title, so it's not all animated he's going to be doing.
Right. But I think this is important for the overall industry because action animation has declined precipitously in the past decade.
Yeah.
On the kids side of things, it's
Really?
because let me finish.
Oh.
Because on the kids side of things, remember action shows are very toy based, and yeah, and those kind of shows have either retreated to Netflix. Like Hasbro's a big player in the Netflix pool. They still have the Transformer series on Cartoon Network. They're airing at 7 in the morning.
Which one is that now?
Cybertron, if I'm remembering.
No, I think it's something else. I forgot what the name is.
Cyberverse was the latest one that I remember, but that's not still having new episodes.
Like 2 years ago at like 6:30 in the morning. Shoot.
Yeah, like they got a Transformer series going on there, but Netflix just premiered a He-Man series. I know that's Mattel, but stick with me. They got that Transformer trilogy.
It's still toyetic, technically.
That's a lot less prevalent on cable and network because those networks invested in their own properties. They generate merchandise, but that's not the point of a lot of these shows. And as far as the adult side of things, here's the thing. Action shows, Western developed, very recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'd say
there was a long period where we weren't really getting any, and then they remembered that they could do that.
Well, yeah, the likes of Jenny Tartakovsky's been on the forefront of that field with the likes of Samurai Jack season 5 and much more recently Primal. He's got more projects along those lines, and Netflix has really been blowing the doors off there. They call them anime. Yes, Seis Manos may not be actual anime, but they are advancing the viability of Western shows that don't have to be fucking Family Guy ripoffs in some fashion, or Rick and Morty clones. That has been one of the big fucking complaints about adult animation in the West. It has to be some sort of sitcom.
Yeah.
And that's been the case since going back to The Simpsons almost. There's some exceptions. I'm yes,
I mean,
they
took their trip off The Simpsons 2 years into it.
Well,
and
it's I can cite a lot. I can cite quite a bit of '90s animation that wasn't ripping off The Simpsons, like with Television, Beavis and Butthead, Aeon Flux. The real fucking culprit here was fucking Family Guy. Yeah, once that got big, oh God, did adult animation become limited. And it's only very recently that it's starting to break those bonds. And that's how far successful Warner Brothers is going to be, don't know. But it's it's definitely a move they have to do, at least in terms of Konami. Cartoon Network is a bit more of an interesting question mark here, because Cartoon Network, I don't know if you've noticed, has been really fucking moribund recently.
What
What do they got going these days? Still Teen Titans Go, and I guess Craig of the Creek.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, Apple and Onion. Look, not to denigrate the current crop of shows on Cartoon Network, but they don't have they're not Adventure Time, they're not Steven Universe, they're not Infinity Train.
They don't have
They just don't have any sort of penetration in that field.
Yeah, as much as we would like Craig of the Creek to be a tentpole, it's not a tentpole. Okay,
I'd say it's a de facto tentpole. Just because
it's probably the only tentpole they have.
Yeah, once again, it's just all of their big stuff from the past decade has ended, or is getting on a year.
Yeah, and apparently the new management is pretty much now going to be going in a direction where they probably might not have a real tentpole of their own. So, because they're going to try to program for 3 different set of audiences. Which, good luck.
To be fair, I get why Cartoon Network is this way. Cartoon Network is actually the way of a lot of networks these days. I mean, people want to bemoan Cartoon Network for its schedule. It's not much different than, say, fucking MTV or Comedy Central or A&E or just so many channels are, just endless real. Yeah, just a few shows.
Throw up in their can. Yeah, just basically throwing whatever they have in the can, maybe some new stuff that they have, and then that's it.
And I'll actually give credit to Adult Swim. They have a fairly varied schedule in the age where you would expect it to be like a lot of Rick and Morty and maybe Tuca and Birdie there, and still some sprinklings of American Dad and Family Guy. And make no mistake, the schedule is still a lot of that, but it's definitely more diverse than their Dayside counterpart.
Well, they're going to have a good chance to make it even more diverse here shortly.
Well, yeah. That's another thing. The contract on Family Guy is expiring probably on December 31st, 2021.
Happy birthday to me.
And because Disney now owns Family Guy, they're taking that to fucking Freeform. In fact, newer seasons are already airing on Freeform.
Which is so awkward. It's not even beginning to describe.
Yeah, because
despite what Disney wants, nobody is touching that network. Nobody.
Unless you're Pat Robertson.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we know who airs on that network and who really runs that network. It's not Disney. It was never Fox. It's always has been, since it launched on the air as a satellite network, Patrick Robertson. Nobody else.
Yep.
And at this point, Disney's too scared and just does not want to get up against Pat Robertson because they don't want to have the whole Disney hates religious freedom and First Amendment garbage. Because they can easily go to war with them at any time. They can go to war. They don't want to because they don't want the smoke. So, yeah, nobody's touching that network.
I think on that note, we should probably start wrapping up for the week.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much run the gamut.
Used and abused it.
Yes.
Okay, well, of course, we've got the big news of the week here. On Monday, we launched the $23,000 Kickstarter for completing the 3 films, at least. I think the 3 cornerstone films of our repertoire here at Moonhawk Publishing, and of course that is the long-standing Death of Perseus movie based on my first novel. That one is actually in progress. Most of the actors' lines and things of that have already been completed and paid for. So the main thing there is getting animation assets and the time to actually complete it. The second one, of course, is Survivor, based on Starship Moonhawk, which stars Elsie Lovelock and Skylar Davenport. They make up a portion of the core crew there, and of course, we also have a minor but not insignificant role played by Rico Fajardo, who plays Lemillion on My Hero Academia. Countless others involved in that project, and then, of course, the big magnum opus that I've been working on. Adam has been following me on that since 2002, when it launched as a webcomic.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, up against The Lounge. The thing that brought us together as brothers in arms in acrimony.
Yeah. Where does the time go?
I know. But this magnum opus that I've been working on now since April of 2001, is finally coming to its terminus on the webcomic front, and the adaptation into a movie has been ongoing since 2017. So that's where a lot of the money is going to go. So that's what this Kickstarter is about. It's about trying to finish hiring the actors to complete these 3 seminal films that are absolutely essential to the Starship Moonhawk franchise in order to move it into the future. The stories that I've been planning for over 2 decades now that I've never been able to get to because, well, frankly, these stories are in the way. Yep. So the Kickstarter's live. It looks like we just got another $10. Somebody upped their pledge. But we are not quite at 1% yet, and we are encroaching on day 3 here. So anything that anybody can do, whether it's sending out a tweet, posting on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I don't care where you put it. You could even put it on Parler. If it gets people angry enough, who the hell knows? They might donate. But we could really use your help in this because absolutely none of this money is going to me. All of the money is going towards production costs and it's pretty threadbare at that, to be honest. In theory, a set of films like this should cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million to make, and we're trying to, really blaze some new trails, so to speak, to for breakout films for indie filmmakers. That's really what it comes down to. The idea being that we start low and then work our way up, into higher value productions and so on and so forth. But first we got to get noticed. And so that's what these films are all about, putting us on the map so that way we can actually get in there and start paying people what they're worth, Especially for the quality of performances that we've received. This has always been a grave injustice in the industry, is that these incredible talents have always sort of languished as working artists instead of receiving the aid and comfort that they so richly deserve for being as good as they are at their craft. That's really my take on it. So, we've always tried to build a better studio and all that stuff. And as Bone Chalk Broadcast just pointed out, got to get Senpai to notice you, and that has always been my struggle. Is that I can get a lot of enthusiasm from the grassroots, but I have a hell of a time getting the big moneyed interests to notice me. So we'll see if we can turn this all around. So that's our big pitch for this week. Of course, tomorrow I don't know. Thursdays and Fridays have always been a sort of languishing on the Vine day for this particular channel. I'm not sure if I'm going to start doing art streams on Picardo or what. Typically, when it's me flying solo, I need somebody to play off of. I'm just that kind of entertainer. I like having a crew and a sidekick to work with.
I don't know, Mac. You can just say you're boring if that's what you feel like. I'm kidding.
In the immortal words of Admiral James T. Kirk, I'll kill you later. Yeah. No, I don't know. I just like having somebody to bounce off of.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, since we are roughly at the halfway point in MS Saga, since that is right now our biggest show, Sundays at 3, we're at about the 50% point on MS Saga, I would guesstimate, based on what I've read online. And so we need to start thinking towards the future. So the question is, what's next? I want to add a retro gaming show to the repertoire. I want to add back in a program because I think that'll work. Thursday nights might work, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But I do want to add something back to it. Drakengard 3 was kind of hit or miss, and I'm not very good at it. You know. But we need to start looking towards the future, and I'm trying to collect ideas for the new poll because remember, 3.5 years ago, I put out a poll saying, well, what do people want to see me play first? And on a vote of 6-3, I think it was, we ended up with Tales of Fantasia. And that's a pretty long and involved game. I'd like to start
That is
out.
true.
Yeah, I'd like to start out with something a little simpler. But then again, I've also got Batten Kaito's Origins on the list. So.
You mean we could be doing Shampoo Percent right now?
Yeah, exactly. I do also have some Japanese PS1 Gundam games. I did find an SD Gundam game. And a space battleship Yamato game. So we've got some interesting choices here. You may not understand what we're doing, but we're going to have the translation guides. But my
okay, well, I will think about that.
Yeah, so we've got some fun prospects, but what I'm keenly interested in doing for the next item is doing something that is either anime inspired or anime based. So keeping with that theme of like Gundam or Space Battleship Yamato or Macross or whatever, and I do have actual legitimate selections in that regard. So, keep that in mind. Send me your suggestions. Drop a comment in the chat. Whatever it takes. And so I think that's it. So that's the two main things I wanted to cover. So I think that pretty much wraps up our broadcast there. So that's it for this week. Again, as I said, tune in Saturday. Rumor has it that Varias and I, due to a very difficult decision regarding ratings, are going to need to return to the realm of Overwatch. The boycott may have lifted, so that may start as early as Saturday, or it may resume Monday. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, we'll be playing Paladins or Apex Legends, and of course, we'll let you know that'll be at 6 p.m. on Saturday. So, till then, I'm your host, Mac Paladin, on behalf of the crew. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, kids.
Mask up and backs up, y'all.